God bless you. Welcome today to our program. Normally we give this program in Spanish, but today we will give it in English. And this is the ministry. It's called Ministerio CLV Juan 8:32, which is the ministry CLV John 8:32. And we are doing this via YouTube, which is MCLVJ 8:32. So CLV stands for Conociendo la Verdad, which basically means knowing the truth. And today, I would like to share with you part of my testimony and share with you something that many of you may be living with today. So thank you for your time. Thank you for this moment. And may the Lord use my words to somehow reach you and touch you today. So I was looking in Facebook the other day, and I found a pastor talking about depression and anxiety. And one thing he said was, and I will read it as he said it. It says, it's that depression and anxiety, it's not something in your mind, but it is something in your body. As much as it is in your head, it's in your body. Having depression and anxiety is like being scared and tired at the same time. It's the fear of failure, but not the urge to be productive. It's wanting friends, but hate socializing. It's wanting to be alone, but not wanting to be lonely. It's feeling everything at once, then feeling paralyzing numb. It is fear that causes anxiety. And he finished with this. What I have noticed is that I have to stop listening to myself and I need to start speaking to myself. And I want to share this verse with you today, which is in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, that says, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee, be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness." And I want to start by talking about people of faith in the Bible. And I'm just going to give a quick list of stories that you may have heard. You know, one of the stories we've heard is the 3 Hebrew men who would not bow to the statue. We hear about Daniel in the lion's den. We hear about Esther when she dared to talk to the king even though it would cost her her life. We know about the woman who bled for 12 years. The centurion who said to Jesus, "If you only say the word, my servant will be healed." David when he faced Goliath. And I want to focus a little bit on David because in 1 Samuel 13:14, the word says that the Lord, when Samuel's talking to Saul about, that he has found someone else, he says, "The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart. And the Lord hath commanded him to be a captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee." But I want to tell you that at a given moment, this man that sought after God's own heart, he wrote these words. In Psalm 69, he said, "Save me, O God, for the waters are coming onto my soul. I sink in deep mire where there is no standing. I come into deep waters where the floods overflowing. I am weary of my crying. My throat is dry and my eyes fail while I wait for my God." In Psalm 22, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. And I can understand him. And you see, this man, he went through moments of sadness. He went through moments of depression. And I want to say 2 things before I tell you my testimony, and it's that the devil wants you to feel ashamed. That is his purpose, because if you feel ashamed, you will not seek help. You will not talk to anybody. You won't share it with anybody. And you will just stay in your own pain. But I will share my story, because if you can relate to my story, then maybe by the grace of God you will seek help. And by the grace of God, not only may you seek help, or if you know someone who is going through this, you can seek help for them and be there for them in the way that they need it. So one thing I want you to know about me, that many people that know me know, is that I am a person of structure. I like things to be organized. I like lists. I like plans. I like to do things in order. Like, okay, we're going to do this. I need to know what time we're going to do this, who's going to be there, what time are we leaving. I need to know all of those things. But for what I'm going to tell you today, there was no plan. There was no answer. There was no steps 1 through 10 to follow. Which made it even more difficult for me because I wanted to find a solution. So I will start by saying this. June of 2020, in the middle of this pandemic, of the pandemic that we lived, and to this day we're still dealing with stuff from COVID, but thank God, we've moved on. I had a dream. I dreamt that I was in a big city like New York City, eating outside of a restaurant with someone. And in this dream, all of a sudden, I look behind this person because we were sitting across from each other. I don't know who this person is, but I look like beyond them, and I saw this huge wave that was several stories high that was like coming our way. When I wanted to warn the person that I was with that this wave was coming, I didn't get a chance to because the wave was upon us. And the wave just dragged us both. I don't know where this person ended up. What I do know is that I found myself in just water. Everywhere I looked, there was water. And all of a sudden, in the same dream, I could see myself, almost like in a fish tank. Like where you see the top of the water and you see things inside. Well, I saw myself. It was like I was seeing myself in this water. And while I was in this water that was like slightly green, I said in this dream, and I said it in Spanish, but I translated it to English. I said, "This is where I'm staying." And then I woke up. I was so scared of my dream. I'm not a person who dreams a lot. God has blessed other people and revealed himself through dreams. But I can't say I'm a dreamer. I can't tell you that I remember my dreams very well. Sometimes you have crazy dreams and I don't even remember them. But this dream I will never forget. And even though I wrote on here a description of my dream, I didn't have to look at it because I can picture it in my mind. And I have a lot of notes here because I think it's important to share a lot of things with you today. And so about a week or two later after this dream, I had already told my mom of the dream I had. Somebody came knocking at my parents' door. Somebody was looking for me who I've had trouble with in the past. And my mom's like, the dream, the wave is here. But after that week, I started having stomach pains. And so many of you may not know that I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. But I started having these stomach pains. And after that day, I started having strong palpitations, heart palpitations. And at that time, I lived alone. And you know what were my first thoughts? My first thoughts is I'm going to die here alone and no one is going to know that I've died. I'm going to die alone. Not even my parents are going to know that I am dead until several days, maybe that I don't call them, and they will know. And I prayed and begged for God to help me. And the next day, I called my doctor, and they said, you know what, we can't see you, all these COVID restrictions, but you need to go to the hospital. And I went to the hospital, and in the hospital, I told them about my heart palpitations, and they said, well, you know what, let's do an EKG. But of course, the EKG came out perfectly fine. Because of the stomach pains and whatnot, I was like, you know what? I'm almost due for a colonoscopy. Because of my condition, I have to have a colonoscopy every 2 years. I was like, doctor, I need my colonoscopy. Let's do it. And because of what I was going through, we sped up the process, and I did have it at the beginning of July. And once again, everything was fine. But I will tell you that a sadness started growing within me that I would cry out of nowhere. Because when people are depressed, they don't understand why they're so sad. They don't understand. You may think, oh, there's a reason. But they don't even know. And I remember that in that month of July, my brother and his family were going to visit my parents. They were going to go stay over at my parents' house. And I was like, you know what? I might as go as well because I'm alone here in my apartment. Let me go spend some time and, things will get better. That week, that was supposed to be one of the weeks that I would enjoy the most because I'm spending a time with my parents, with my brother, my sister-in-law, and my nephews. I should have been happy. And I'm sorry, it's not nephews, it's nephew because Logan wasn't born yet at that time. But I will tell you, it was one of my most miserable weeks. I was surrounded by loving family, but all I wanted to do was go cry in a corner. And what do you do when people ask you, why are you so sad, and you don't have an answer? You can't explain it, and it's frustrating because you can't answer that question. You can't say, I'm sad because of this. I just know that there is a sadness that is very overwhelming, and I can't explain it, and I just need you to be there and not judge me or not ask me questions that I cannot answer. And I just felt more alone. I wasn't sleeping well. Little by little, I slept even less. And during that time, during COVID, I was able to work from home for a couple of months. But then in August, they said you could come back to the office. But I was going to start going there in second shift to avoid people, the contact with people. And I just felt like I had no life working in second shift. I don't know how many of you work in second shift, and God bless you for it. But it was very tough for me, and going through this situation, and you add second shift on top, there was not that many people. I was in an office all by myself. I hardly was able to speak to people. And I was doing the job I had done for 20 years. But the days became so long and so overbearing that I just couldn't deal with it. And I slept less and less. And, there's medications, you have trouble sleeping. There's melatonin, start drinking that. That didn't work. People take Benadryl to fall asleep. That worked for a period of time. Then that stopped working. Then there's ZQL. And you know what? I don't want to list all the medications because I certainly don't want you taking them as a solution. And during this time, I even had my parents take me to the hospital several times because I'm like, I need help because I need them to give me something to sleep. Because I don't know if you know that if you lack sleep for several days, for a period of time, and even if you sleep for 2 hours a night, it catches up with you and you can't concentrate. It's difficult to even read. And so they prescribed me medications in the hospital for insomnia. But sometimes Google can be a problem because I would look up what these medications were for. And yes, they were prescribed for insomnia, but they also were prescribed for bipolar disorder, for schizophrenia. And I'm like, I don't have that. Why are you giving me medication for those things? And so, it was hard for me to take. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to even take this medication because that's not what I have. At that time, I told my pastors about what I was going through, and I went to their house, and I visited them several times, and they listened. And it was their house was a place where I found some kind of peace. But I knew that once I left there, The thoughts would come. And little by little, I felt like I was losing my mind. I decided in the month of September that I was going to go back to first shift, to see if the change in the shift was one of the reasons why I was feeling this way, that it would somehow help, but it did not. Then I went to talk to my primary care doctor, and he prescribed me some sleeping medication. And I would sleep like 2 hours, then wake up and stay awake for a couple of hours, and then fall asleep for maybe another half hour, and then it was time for me to go to work. And you know what? I was living with my parents at the time. I was still paying for my apartment, but I was staying with my parents because I felt that I could not be alone. But somehow, for whatever reason, I told myself, you know what? I'm going to give myself a certain period of time, and I'm going to go back to my apartment. And I thought to myself that in the month of October, I would go back, and I'm going back to my apartment, but I certainly was in no condition to do so. And I even went with a friend to a retreat for fasting and prayer, and I took the Ezekiel with me. I went to talk to a cardiologist because, the heart palpitations, I went to all the doctors. Something's got to be wrong with me. You got to find something wrong. And it's frustrating when they say everything is fine. And you know what? Everything is fine is a good thing. When you go to a doctor and they tell you everything is fine, that should be a great thing. But it didn't explain how I was feeling. It didn't explain my lack of sleep. It didn't explain the tingling in my arms. It didn't explain any of that. So I went to my doctor again. And my doctor suggested, he's like, maybe it's possible that you're depressed. I could give you some medication, but those of you that have suffered from depression, you know that medication doesn't work like this. After 6 weeks, possibly, it might start taking effect. You might start feeling some change. When he told me that, because I had never dealt with depression before, and I honestly had not dealt with anybody who had gone through depression before, I was like, in 6 weeks, I'm going to be dead. What do you mean you're going to give me medication that's going to start working in 6 weeks? I don't even know if I'm going to make it till tomorrow. And you're giving me this. I went to another doctor for a second opinion. And they basically told me, I can't diagnose you with anything because I don't know you. This is the first time I've talked to you. I really can't tell you what to prescribe, because I don't know your medical history. I know nothing about you, just what you're telling me. And I can't just prescribe you medicine based on what you're telling me. So that was frustrating as well. And I just felt like I was losing my mind, and I still couldn't concentrate on things. I remember that even trying to read the word was difficult because I could see the words, but I couldn't understand what I was reading. I couldn't form a thought of what I was reading. And one thing that happened during that time, which I will regret for the rest of my life, but I can't do anything about it, is that my sister-in-law's father passed away at that time. And she was hurting. And she was in pain. But it's very hard for you to be able to encourage someone and be a support for someone when you are feeling so awful. When you are feeling so down that it's like, how can I support you when I am feeling so awful? And I remember going to her dad's funeral, and the only thing I can think of is my sadness. I couldn't be there for her or her brother or her mother because of how I was feeling. And it also made me feel worse because I'm like, you're just being selfish. You didn't lose the loved one. They did. There was times that I was driving to or from work on several occasions, my eyes would just close. And only God's grace is the only reason that I'm standing here, because I could have crashed on so many opportunities because my eyes would just shut because I was exhausted. I don't know if you know what it feels to feel sleepy, but you can't fall asleep. There were times when I left my work, and I remember, and I've passed this area several times, even till this day, where I would think to myself, these thoughts would just come and say, if you crash yourself right there, this would end. Your pain will end if you just crash your car right there. You know what I was trying to do, what I was thinking. I just wanted to crash and die. But you know what? Almost 2 years ago, when I was cleaning my house with my husband, I found a small notebook. And I was going to throw it away, but I opened it up, and it said November 16th, 2020. I found a letter that I wrote to the Lord of my pain, of my anguish, my desperation. I was asking him what I had done to deserve this. Is this a punishment? I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Just take this pain and this anguish away from me, because I just want to die. Please forgive me. Please rescue me. Please do something. I don't know. Reveal this to other people. Why am I going through this? I begged him to take me. I begged him to end my life. And when I read that almost a year later, I felt the pain and sorrow for that person who wrote that, which was myself. But I was glad that I was reading it, because that was something that was in the past. But that was the day before I went back to the hospital one more time, and it was not to get pain meds. It was not, meds for insomnia. It was so I could get a psych evaluation. November 17, 2020 was the day that I can say that I broke my parents' heart. I went to work, but I got home thinking, I can't continue living like this. Something's got to change. And I didn't even write this here, but I remember standing in the kitchen window, looking outside and being like, this is what my life is going to be like. My parents are getting older, and now they have to take care of me. It should be me taking care of them, not them taking care of me. And this is what my existence is going to be from now on. I saw no future. If you told me, how do you see yourself in 1 month? I would be like, I can't see myself making it till tomorrow. So a month, forget about it. So that day, I remember I called a sister that I knew who had experience with dealing with people that suffer from depression and anxiety. And I told her what I was feeling, and I told her all the symptoms and whatnot. She was worried for me, and she said, you know what? You need to go to the hospital, because you have crossed the line already. You need to go get a psych evaluation. You need to tell them so that you may not an outpatient thing, that they may keep you there. And she worked in the Institute of Living at that time, and she said, ask them to be put there. I remember sitting on my bed and thinking, how am I going to tell my mom and dad that I need them to take me to the hospital because I need a psych evaluation? I was so scared to tell them that I called my brother, who lives in Rhode Island, to call them and talk to them for me, because I didn't dare talk to my parents. I will never forget my dad's words once they were talking to Mike, and I went to the living room, and my dad said, I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart. There are a few times where I have seen my dad cry. He's not a person to cry a lot. But that day I saw him cry, and I was the cause. And that night, my parents took me to the hospital, even though they didn't agree with what I was doing. That night I went to the hospital. I told them I needed a psych eval. They made me change. They took away my clothes, my phone, my wallet, everything. And I spent the night at the hospital. They put me in a room that only had a bed and a table, and it didn't even have a door. And I could understand it because they didn't know what situation I was in. So anything that could be a danger to myself, they had to take away from me. I did speak to them, and I told them that I basically wanted to die. I told them that I had begged the Lord to take me. And at first they said to me, well, maybe we can do an outpatient thing. And I said, no, I can't leave this place the way I am. I need the evaluation, and I need to stay here. And I told him about the Institute of Living as that sister had told me, and I didn't know what to expect from that place. I mean, obviously I knew it wasn't going to be a hotel of any sort, but I didn't know what to expect. And I was there for a week, and I can tell you it was one of the longest weeks of my existence. I wasn't there for a long time. But when you're in a place like that, feeling the way I was feeling, it seemed like an eternity. And one thing they told me, well, first, we can't send you there until there's room for you. So we're going to have to keep you here until there's room for you there. Now, that seemed long for me because I still wasn't sleeping well. I saw other people that were in worse condition than I was in. At least that I could say that they seemed to be. But then an opening was available at the Institute of Living, and they said, you know what? You can go there tomorrow. Time seemed to stand still. It was I found myself in such desperation. They gave me medicine to fall asleep, and I wouldn't fall asleep. Once again, they took everything from me. I couldn't use my cell phone. I could only check messages, but I couldn't respond. I would have to use their public phones for any calls, that I had to write down the numbers of people that I wanted to talk to in that moment. I couldn't even leave. There was a line that I couldn't cross. And I remember one time crossing that line, not knowing, and they said, stop. You cannot pass that line. I felt like I was a prisoner. I felt like I was in jail. And then I was like, but I put myself here. And because it was during COVID time, there were allowed no visitors. So my parents couldn't even come visit me. And I felt alone in a place where I just felt like I was being analyzed. Like every movement I made was used to determine whether I could stay or whether I needed more help or whatnot. One thing I remember from the first room I was in that week, my view was a funeral home. And I remember seeing that funeral home and thinking, that is where I'm going to end up. I'm going to end up in a funeral home. That's going to be my end. And yes, I know that in the end, that's probably it. But I thought it was going to be so much sooner than it was. And they evaluated me for days. And there was a big rec room that had puzzles. You could watch TV. You could color. There were books to read. I had therapy sessions surrounded by people who wanted to die, and some had even tried to kill themselves. People who were struggling with their own identities. There was people there, and we were all a mess. And even there, I tried reading the Bible because I remember in Hartford Hospital, I asked them, do you have a Bible? They had a Bible of the New Testament, they just had the New Testament. And I tried to read the Gospels and I couldn't even understand. There was a woman there who I saw who had been there for the third time. And anytime I saw her, I would see like her head would just shake randomly. And I found out later it was because she had received electroshock therapy. And I saw all these things and I was like, that's my future. That's my future. People talking incoherently. That's my future. I saw all of these things. I was like, that is my future. And it made me feel worse. But you know what? God sometimes doesn't make sense. It is amazing at the way he does things, because there was a woman that I met there who had stage 4 cancer. Her husband had left her. Her best friend had locked her up there. Her daughters didn't want her to see her because they left with their dad. And it was that woman who God used to encourage me. God used a woman whose life was in shambles to encourage me and to tell me to keep the faith, to still keep believing in God, that he had not forsaken me. And I am so grateful to God for that woman. And I still managed to keep in contact with her. She left that place too, and she's so much better. But I thank God for her. They gave me strong medication for insomnia. They gave me medication for anxiety. And I remember one particular night where they gave me this medication because the other ones weren't working. They said, you know what, we're going to give you this medication. In a half an hour, you should be asleep. If you're not asleep, we'll give you more. I didn't fall asleep in a half an hour, so I went to ask for more. Then I sat back because I was doing some puzzles with some women. And all of a sudden, I lost consciousness. And how do I know that I lost consciousness? Because I woke up. And I couldn't even hold my head high. Like I was just in the chair. I couldn't hold my body together. I had people around me. All of a sudden, it seemed like there was like 20 nurses around me. And I kept coming and going. Unconscious, back to consciousness. I thought I was going to die. They put me to bed, and the next day what they told me was that I had had a panic attack. I've never had a panic attack in my life, but I had a panic attack. They started giving me blood pressure medication because my blood pressure went up. But they took our blood pressure, they read our blood pressure in the morning and in the evening. And I knew that they took that data to make a decision for my diagnosis. And so when they were about to take read my blood pressure, it would skyrocket because all the ideas came. What are they gonna, if this is high, what are they gonna say? Are they gonna give you more meds? Are they gonna keep you here longer? What is gonna happen to you? And those racing thoughts would just come, and my blood pressure would be so high that they started giving me this medication. The last visit that I had with this psychiatrist there, it was to determine whether I was going to stay or not. I remember that this was the week before Thanksgiving of that year. I didn't want to spend Thanksgiving locked up. And I know some people who did. But I didn't want to spend it there. So the last visit with the psychiatrist, he asked me some questions, and I was like, I need to concentrate on these questions. I need to give him the answer he wants, because I do not want to spend Thanksgiving locked up in this place. Because during Thanksgiving, of course, the nurses, the doctors, they would want their time off. So the staff was limited. There was no therapy sessions. There was nobody there. They just fed you, and that's it. And so I got out of the hospital the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. My parents went to pick me up. And I remember on Thanksgiving of that year, which should have been a happy time because I was going to spend it with my family. My parents were going to go to my grandma's house, visit my uncle, my aunt, my cousins. I didn't want to go because I still felt awful. But I didn't want to stay alone because my parents were going. And so I went, and I remember sitting in a corner thinking, they're all so happy. They're all laughing. They're having a great time. And I'm not. My heart palpitations still continued. And I just wanted to disappear. But I made it through that day. And I started, when I left the Institute of Living, there was an agreement that I was going to go into group therapy. That I was going to go start therapy for a professionals group. 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. When I left that hospital, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. I got out of the hospital 2 days, yes, before Thanksgiving. But I started therapy the following week. And you know what the thing is? In this therapy group, first of all, I thought, therapy? What is it going to help me to talk to somebody about how I'm feeling? They don't know how I'm feeling. They don't know inside me. What is it going to help me to be in therapy? Because I was in the Institute of Living, I was in therapy with other people, and I just felt it was useless. But you know what? In this group of people that were professionals, there was other doctors. There were psychologists. There were social workers that were not there to help patients. They were patients. They were struggling with suicidal thoughts. They were struggling with getting out of bed. They were struggling with so many things, wondering what tomorrow would be. And I remember going through these sessions, and once a week, the doctor would check on everybody's medication. Is it helping you? Is it not? Do we need to increase the dosage? Is this good medication? Do we need to change your medication? Etc. And it was via Zoom. And it lasted 4 hours. And they would go through so many things. Oh, this is how you deal with anxiety. This is how you deal with depression. You have to replace your thoughts, etc., etc. Because you know what the thing is? Therapy is important. But a therapist can't give you the solution that you want. What they give you are tools that they know have helped other people. People who have studied this, and they have studied themselves. But you need to find what works for you. Which is another thing that I struggle with, because I wanted an answer for me. And I remember things started slowly getting better. And I thank God for that group, because they helped me a lot. And I will tell you, during all of this time, what I thought is, my faith is at 0. Where is God? I call out to him and he's doing nothing. And nobody understands me. Nobody knows my pain. Nobody knows and understands my suffering. How could they? But the thing that to this day surprises me the most is that when I left that therapy group, they asked, oh, so-and-so is leaving. What do you want to tell them? Several of them told me that what impressed them the most about me was my faith. And I was like, my faith? When I feel like my faith is down there, you're impressed by my faith? I lasted in therapy almost 2 months. It's only supposed to be a month. And I remember at the end of the month of December, they were like, well, you have like 1 more week of therapy. You have to go back to work. I said, I'm not ready to go back to work. I cannot go back to work. I am not in a position to go back to work. And they extended it. And I thank God for my job. I thank God for insurance. Because I went through all this. but insurance paid for it. I did not lose my job as I thought I would. I said, I'm going to lose my job. How am I going to support myself? Now my parents have to support me when they should be resting, when they need to worry about themselves, not worried about their daughter who doesn't know what kind of future she's going to have. But during all of this time, I had people that were there for me. I had people who supported me. And after the Lord, first and foremost, I'd like to thank my parents. And I've told them this, but I thank them again because without their support, I wouldn't be here right now. I thank God for my pastors. People that were dealing with something difficult didn't know how to help me, but I know they prayed and they listened and they were there for me. I thank my brother and my sister, my brother Michael and my sister Yvette, and my sister doesn't live nearby. She's always moved around because her husband is in the army, so they've relocated many times. But I thank God for them because they listened to me even though they didn't understand what I was going through, and they didn't judge me. And I had a friend who I met during this time over the phone. And years have passed, and I still haven't had the privilege of meeting her in person. She lives in Puerto Rico. But I will tell you, I can't even tell you how many times I called her on the phone because she has battled with depression. She has battled with anxiety. And she was there for me every phone call. She would talk to me for hours, and she would just tell me to keep the faith, to keep seeking the Lord. Someone who has gone through this, who lives with it, and she was giving me that advice. But you know what? God is funny because in one of my hardest times of my life, that's when the Lord gave me my husband. When I was going through all of this, he wasn't even my boyfriend, but he was there supporting me. He prayed and fasted for me when I was feeling down. And I remember many times he was like, oh, let's go out. And I was like, I don't want to go out anywhere. But he would take me just for a drive. And I'm so grateful to the Lord for that. In the middle of your storm, God still shines through. And I am grateful for my husband, who is a man of God, who was there for me when he should have just gone running. Because who wants to deal with someone like that? But why am I standing here today? I am standing here because God is so good. Because I'm standing here because of his unconditional love, because of an unmerited favor, because of his sacrifice on the cross, because of his love for me. I am standing here today when I should be dead. If I didn't seek help, I would be dead. Because you know what? Yes, I prayed the Lord to take me, but there's not that much room between you asking God to take you and you doing it and taking the matters into your own hands. So even when somebody says, I'm praying for God to take me, pay attention. Because there's not that much time between one and the other. And the last thing you want to hear is somebody say, you know so-and-so? They took their life yesterday. Nobody wants to hear that. And I remember when I spoke to my pastors, the pastor's wife shared a video of a song with me. And it became my anthem. And in Spanish, It's called Te Rescataré. In English, it's called Rescue. And I want to share some of the lyrics with you. And I want for you that are going through depression, that are depressed right now, that you don't know where this sadness is coming from, to hear these words. You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen, I hear your whisper. Underneath your breath, I hear your SOS. My favorite part. I will send out an army to find you. In the middle of the darkest night, it's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that can be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter. I'll be your armor. It's a beautiful song. But I can see that it's also sung by a person who knows what pain is. And why do I tell you all of this today? Because I want you to understand that God has not forgotten you. God has not left you behind. He is not done with you yet. Why you are going through this, why you have to live with this, I do not know. But He knows. But I want you to tell you also that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to feel this way. Do not feel ashamed. Do not feel like you have to hide yourself. Do not feel that you need to have a smile from ear to ear and not show anybody what you're going through. You need to seek help. You need to talk to somebody. Because the last thing the devil wants is for you to communicate to somebody what you're going through. He wants you to take your life. He's already condemned. He already has no hope, and he wants to drag you with him. But you still have hope because you still have life. And while you have life, you still have the moment to seek the Lord. And will He rescue you? Yes, He will. The problem is, He's not going to rescue you the way that you may think, in the time that you may think, in the way that you may think. But that's okay. As long as you understand that you are in His hands, and let me tell you, I know it hurts. I know it hurts. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you your feelings are wrong. I also want you to understand that there are people around you who will never understand your pain. And that's okay. I will tell you this. There are people in my life who didn't understand what I was going through. Until this day, they may never. But I would never want them to go through what I did so that they may understand. I'd rather they live their life not understanding than for them to understand me to live what I lived. I also want to tell you that medications are not bad when they're given by a professional, by a doctor. I have a friend of mine who's been taking them for 20 years. And I can stand here and say that she is a woman of God. Her husband is an evangelist, and they go to different places and they preach the word of God. But this is something that she's dealing with. And this is something that she's lived with. You need to do what is best for you. First and foremost, to seek the Lord with all of your heart and to trust Him. And I tell you this And I know it's hard because during those times I heard that from so many people. Trust in the Lord. He's got you. You're a warrior. And I was like, I don't want to hear it because that's not how I'm feeling. And I don't know where God is because I wouldn't be going through this if he was here. A lot of times when I've talked to different people that have gone through depression and anxiety, one thing they tell me, people don't understand. I do. I understand your pain. I understand your sorrow. I understand. You are not alone. That's what the devil wants you to think. That's exactly what the devil wanted me to think. But I am not alone. And there are things that we're going to have to go through in life that'll shape us, that'll form us, because we're not going to learn any other way. But every step of your life, God is there. He hasn't left you. He hasn't abandoned you. And I will leave you with the verse that I started out with. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yeah, I will help thee. Yeah, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Thank you so much for listening to me today. And if during this time you feel the need to accept Jesus Christ in your life, we are here to pray. It doesn't matter that I don't know where you are. You may be miles away, states away, maybe even a country away. But I know that my God can reach you wherever you are. Wherever you find yourself. Even if you're crying. Even if you feel alone. But his reach has no limits. So I would like to pray for you today. And may the Lord that freed me, that helped me, be your refuge and your Savior. But you need to seek him. Find and you shall seek, says the Lord. Let's pray. Dear Lord, dear Father, oh Lord, you have told me so much that my testimony would help others, Father. And I pray that whoever hears this, Lord, knows that they're not alone, that you are there for them, that you fight for them, that you are watching. But not only are you watching, you're moving, because you are a God of action. And I ask you for whoever right now is in a bed crying, is in a corner in tears, for those that are trying to take their life right now, Father, I ask you to intervene, that they may understand that not all hope is lost, that there is a loving God who wants them, who cares for them, who died on the cross for them. I want them to understand that Jesus died on the cross for all of us. Father, bless them, Lord. Speak to them. Do what you do best. You are a God who changes hearts. There is no formula. There is no steps. But you know all the steps, you know all the formulas, you know all the solutions. And for them, I pray. I pray for them, Lord. I beg you for their lives, Father, that you may do in them what you have done in me. Thank you, Lord. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. God bless you, and thank you.